The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed during this or any broadcast belong solely to our guests or our hosts. These broadcasts do not represent or reflect the views of their employers, sponsors, or affiliated organizations.
Welcome to the Flipboard EDU podcast with your host, William Jeffrey, where we collaborate, communicate, and educate with the greatest educators in the world on Flipboard. Let's start the show.
Welcome back, Flipboard fam. This is your favorite coach, Coach Jeffrey. And Mike Olson was a mentor English teacher at the Title I High School that I began teaching at in Houston, Texas, oh so long ago. Now, Mike is the CEO of Acton Academy in Northwest Houston with over 250 private schools worldwide. Mike is a graduate of the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse with a bachelor's in English and has an MBA from Rice University, the Jones School of Business. Innovation is Mike's middle name. He pioneered the micro-school model, an approach that rethinks traditional education that is an alternate but equal form of K-12 education for students. In this episode, we speak to Mike about his collaborative classrooms of multi-age learners. We discuss how students manage their own discipline by protecting their culture, which they agree to uphold. We also discuss the hero's journey method and why building character is important to his students' future. So like we always do about this time, let's collaborate, communicate, and educate with the best educators in the world right here on Flipboard EDU Podcast. Welcome back, Flipboard fam. This is your favorite coach, Coach Jeffrey, and I have another amazing guest here tonight, my good friend, Mike Olson. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Will. I feel a little bit like a celebrity. That was a nice opening. Like, that's on.
Hey, man. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Hey, Mike, tell our listening audience a little bit about you.
First, I want to thank you, Will, before I answer that question. It's really an honor to be on the show. You're a guy that we go way back, someone that has always been inspirational to me, and I just appreciate the opportunity to hang. And when you called the other day, I couldn't answer the phone fast enough. There's a lot of calls that I get that I'm kind of like, oh, man. Whoa. But then I saw it was you. I was like, man, let's see what's going on. That was great to hear from you and reconnect. And yeah, man, I really appreciate it. This is pretty cool, and I loved everything that you're doing. And you're a big inspiration, and you're one of the greats, man. A little bit about myself. I'm married and a father to two great boys. They're 12 and 9 now, or 8. It's, man, being a dad is probably one of the greatest things in the world. Like, I love nothing more than hanging out with my boys and Leticia and just being together. My background, I'm kind of a maverick. I'm an entrepreneur. I should have been an entrepreneur from the start. I've kind of been at every level in education. We were teachers together back in the day. Moved into the administration, moved into charter schools, moved into data at the big district. Always looking for the edge to what's going on here? How do we fix this? I'm just an innovator by nature, and then ultimately landed on got to do something. The answer for me was to just create something new. That's on the educational side. And then personally, love to cook. We both love to grill. That's a lot of fun, and lots of outdoor stuff. Grew up playing basketball like yourself. Yeah, this I guess that's a little snapshot. It's hard to talk about yourself,
Yeah, it is. Let me brag on you for a little bit. As far as one of the most innovative and inspirational educators that I have ever known. Every time I talk to you, you ignite my passion for learning, and I'm glad that I can give you a call and you can reinvigorate me. As I was talking to you on the phone, of course, our wives are friends, and we've known each other for years, but we were just overly joyed to hear you and the people who you touched at Davis as far as students and administrators from day one, from the time I met you up until now. You have always been a beacon. I just thank you for doing that. Before we even get started, that's what I know about you, sir. You are a great man. And I appreciate you being a really good friend.
You're too kind, and the friendship thing. As I get older, man, it just people in your lives, your friends, that's what it's all about. That's who's most important. So I appreciate that.
No problem, buddy. You were a teacher with me. We worked at Jefferson Davis High School when Jefferson Davis was a dropout factory. You were one of the people in the English department who were instrumental, people who could teach. I'm not just talking about who can lead, but you were an amazing teacher. You moved into administration. What made you decide to build your own school?
Lots of things. I think at the core of it, it's as a kid, school sucked for me. I was bored out of my mind. And I grew up in a real small town, real small school, great people, surrounded by great folks. And I loved school and I hated it. I loved the learning. It was interesting, but golly, I was bored out of my brain and having to follow the rules. I remember looking out, I was probably 7, 8, 9 years old, probably my youngest son's age, Simon, looking at my dog in the yard underneath the tree before school. I'm like, can we just switch places? I want to be hanging out under the tree, running around, doing what you do, rather than having to stand in line, sit here for this long, do this, do that. It just killed me as a kid. But I loved it. I liked it, but it was a very painful experience. When I had the opportunity to walk into a school here, in Houston, I went into it like, we got to be able to change this whole thing from the jump. That was the first thing I always thought about was, let me get into this. But the whole goal is to change it all. That was early on, even when I was in college. There's a lot of great that happens in schools. I don't want to drag on schools. It's not great for everybody. There's a lot of painful experiences that happen in school. I think teachers are given an impossible job. Principals, teachers, this idea of school in general, I thought about as I weaved my way in and out, as I spent some time at the district level of one of the largest school districts in Houston, crunching numbers, crunching data. I did some analysis that would just blew my mind, that made me look at the schools that we thought were always the worst performing. Well, when you controlled for certain factors around ELL learners, special ed population, all kinds of things, it struck me that this whole thing is this big behemoth. Just the companies that are big today, Apple starts in a garage. All the tech companies all started up in these little tiny spots, trying to figure out something differently. I think that's where I took my cues. Is we've got to just go back to the basics. My favorite guys is Peter Thiel, the 0 to 1. We got to go back to first principle thinking, just really reimagine what the learning experience can be from the ground up. And let's just build around that. There's too many entrenched interests. I'm constantly doing unlearning from my experience and what we're doing now, to really the goal at the end of the day. And then my own kids were a reason why I wanted to start my own school. Is we had great schools out here. They would have been fine, but I wanted freedom, independence, creativity. In a selfish way, I wanted the school that I wanted as a kid. I think all of us as parents, especially with this pandemic, would realize, man, it'd be nice to do my own thing. And that's a whole nother conversation we can get to. I wanted to create a place that kids were learning so much, having so much fun, so safe, so interested, so engaged that they never want to leave. Create the Harry Potter experience in the movies where the kids, but I wanted to create a magical place where kids can come and learn and have fun and engage and pursue their passions. Really refocus for me what the purpose of school is. And that's to help people create themselves. I think our premise at my school is we believe every child's a genius on a hero's journey to change the world. When you look at an individual and look for the best, you look at each individual and you look for their greatness. That's what you focus on rather than the deficiencies, and rather than they didn't do well on this test or they didn't do well here. Yeah, you always got to improve and get better, but it's got to be from this premise that this person in front of me is going to change the world in a profound way. And they have talent and greatness beyond anything I can ever imagine. When you think about people that way, you treat them differently. That's really the premise of where we're coming, is to create that place where everybody can thrive and be wonderful and be happy. It's not all rainbows and lollipops. Growth and thriving and building a community is hard, and there's tears and there's frustration and there's challenge. So I don't want to make it sound like it's easy. It's really hard, actually. Not
only did you build one school, but you built a network of schools.
Yeah. So I joined the Acton Academy network. with Laura and Jeff Sandifer. We were one of their first expansion schools, and now there's over 250 around the world. A lot of schools in Houston grew. We were the first site in Houston, and there's other entrepreneurs now in Houston that are running Actons, and it's amazing. I think the other premise of when I got started was to build, this was before actually I met Acton, but to build a model where anyone anywhere can start their own school. Because I think we're at a time where everything's becoming distributed. You're looking at everything's going hyper local. Microbreweries is a great example. I think cryptocurrency is another example where Twitter is a great example of how the entire Middle Eastern country was destabilized with Twitter because people had the voice and now they have an audience. I think that is an incredibly powerful technology that applies to all industries. And I think for schools, it's coming.
I think that you are a pioneer, most definitely in that. I remember when you first started your journey with the school, you guys were in a pool house in your neighborhood. To hear that you got over 200 schools worldwide, man, that's amazing. I'm so proud of you because I know the work that you and Leticia put into it, and you and your whole family believe in it. That's another thing. You're not just talking about something that you didn't invest your family in. So.
Yeah. And I think about, again, selfishly, that's one of the benefits I didn't even anticipate is I'm with my family every day. And it's awesome. I think every family is different. I think for certain families, that would be really hard. But for us, it's the best thing in the world. We see each other all the time. It's just fabulous.
Why is it important for students to develop a respect for economic, political, and religious freedoms?
That's one of our pillars. And I think any casual observation, any type of political discourse over the past 3 years, actually past 5 years, honestly, is evidence of why we need to develop a better civil discourse. That starts with respecting economic, political, and religious freedoms. And I think one of the beautiful things about our studio is you bring your whole self to school. You live your values. You're going to be engaged with people that have different values and different beliefs than you are. And that's really important. And I think the best way I can summarize the pinnacle of what is achievable is Ginsburg and Scalia, the two Supreme Court justices who are on the opposite end of every hot button political issue in the 21st century. Every one of them. Absolutely polar opposites. Yet they were absolute best friends. To me, that is a beautiful lesson that needs to be shouted from the mountaintops, that two people that have absolutely diametrically opposed views can still be friends. They can still find that common ground. That's one of the absolute non-negotiables in our studio is that you find the common ground, and by doing that, you're seeking understanding rather than trying to prove your point. We talk about it in our history is what we're trying to do is prove that you're wrong. If it is, then that's a huge missed opportunity. And I don't think there's a lot of good that comes out of that. Let's say I win and you feel terrible about it. Now our relationship's fractured. Now to build a coalition, build the work, it's going to be really difficult. Versus if our goal is to seek understanding of each other, and we put a rule in place sometimes in our discussions where before you can say anything or state your opinion, you've got to ask 3 to 4 questions of someone before you can say what you think or to voice your opinion, because the goal is to seek understanding. And then a couple things happen when you do that. A, you deepen your own convictions. You hear their argument and then you listen and you ask some questions and they don't answer them in a way that satisfies you. You realize, okay, it validates where I'm coming from. Or you change your mind and you're like, wow, I never thought of it that way. That changes my position a little bit. I think society needs a lot more room for people to be able to change their minds, change their positions, that it's okay. That's one of the markers of being intelligent is to be able to change your positions. And new data comes about and you move forward. Life is changing. We don't live in the same world we lived in just even a year. Just think how different the world is compared to a year ago.
It is crazy, man. And I don't know where we fell off in civil discourse. Why is it so important that you're right? And my boss, I did something that I shouldn't have done at work. And I went to my boss, and what made me realize the way my boss spoke to me, I was like, oh, I'm sorry, man. I'm so sorry. You don't have to be sorry. Let's just move past it. That made a deeper respect for my leader when he framed it in that way. Of course, it was something that I probably shouldn't have done. And now that I think about it as the lesson learned, I know that's something I shouldn't have done. But for him to say that to me in that fashion, let's just go ahead and move past it. Now you've learned the lesson. And I think that's important when we are in discourse with people. It's not necessarily about being who's right or who's wrong. And I appreciate your school focusing on that because I think that's important, which goes into the other question. Why is it important to build strong character in students?
When you think about, especially in schools, you can't get away from intelligence and smarts. You think, oh, they're really smart students, they're really sharp with this and that. And there's a whole problem in and of itself that we can get into. But Enron was full of smart folks. There's benefits and there's importance to that. But I don't think it's as important as being fair and honest and kind and doing what's right. And I think having a strong character means admitting when you're wrong, embracing failure. I think that's when I think about the character building that happens in our school, is that, and you just told a beautiful story about it, is that the most profound learning comes from failure. The only way that we learn is by making mistakes. And I think schools so often prioritize the answer over the process of growth that we then try to hide our mistakes. We're ashamed of our mistakes. One of the things we really try to do is normalize failure. If I'm doing fourth grade math and I'm struggling, that's okay. You're going to have to get this problem wrong 15 times before you get it. And that's fine. And then the other side of that is some people aren't going to, and we can get into this on the methodology, is this idea of self-paced, mastery-based learning. Whereas other people maybe you're going to fly through this lesson, but then it's going to take me longer. And that's fine. That's okay. But it takes character to be able to admit that failure, to embrace that failure, to keep going and use it for growth. Props to your principal, your boss, for making it a safe place because that's what we need is you're going to make mistakes. One of my mentors said to me, Mike, listen, you're never going to make more mistakes than I have in my entire life. So it's okay. And you just got to learn from it. You just got to grow from it, become a better person. And that's people's strong character. I think they welcome that. And they're also generous with others. When they see someone else making those mistakes, I think the other thing that happens in school sometimes is I think we're so quick to punish. We want retribution and justice. We want to punish. There's no growth that comes from shame and punishment. It's just hiding and running away and not learning from it. And that in great leaders too is they're incredibly generous with people.
I just had a discussion today. We were talking about discipline. And if your focus is not building strong character, then discipline is really not the end goal. It's not the means to get to where you need to be. I'm going to have to rewind and take notes on this conversation, sir.
I mean, we can talk about how we don't really do discipline in our scenario, but we do have boundaries and we do have rules and there's consequences. And I think I get excited when I talk about it because I've seen some amazing things happen.
Before we go there, because I want to talk about it because that's an issue now that a lot of schools who have to, because teachers are under the gun sometimes per se to get curriculum done, scope and sequence. Teaching and learning is the most important things that happen in the school, and they don't have time for misbehavior. At the same time, we expect students to come to school with character. I'm an assistant principal. That's one of the things that I have to make sure that when a student breaks a rule, then there's a consequence for it. But at what point, if I'm being introspective and I'm looking at myself, at what point am I trying to grow this student so that he doesn't make those same mistakes? And how do I grow his character in the same point? And how do I explain to someone why character is important? And that's an important thing that I don't think that we focus on all the time. We'll focus on learning math, on reading. We'll take tests to the nth degree, but the things that is measurable also in the school, we hardly pay any attention to. And that is building character. We want leaders in the school. We want kids to follow directions, but we don't focus on building character.
And how we approach it, I think about it in the same way as learning math. In order to build character, you're going to have to make mistakes. You want to be truthful, you're going to have to suffer the consequences of lying. I think we make this assumption that someone is born with good character or good character is always never making a bad decision. But I think with kids, the only way you learn math is when you're making mistakes and you fix them, or you're writing, be a good writer or a reader, or failure is part of the learning process. And it's no different than what happens in the same thing with character. I need to suffer the consequences of not treating someone. And that's how I learn. But the way that we frame it is we separate out the individual. I don't think of it in terms of individual. We think about it as protecting the community. So at the beginning of the year, we sit down with we call our students heroes. We sit down with our heroes. Heroes do hard things. That's what we call them, heroes. Heroic things. And heroes get knocked down and they stand back up and they fail and they try again. And it's not that they have super strength or anything, superpowers, but it's that they do hard things. And the first thing we ask is, what are the promises you guys need to make to each other to make this the best place for you that you can come to? First thing they say is with no bullying. They don't want any bullying, no teasing, none of that stuff. That's number one. They want to be safe. Then they talk about things that they want to learn. They want to have fun. They want to work hard. The kids understand at a very elemental level that hard work is rewarding. Like, we put those things in place, and then when those rules and those promises get broken, it's a matter of if. It's when's it going to happen? The heroes have that responsibility to hold each other accountable to the covenant that they sign. We make a very big deal out of creating this covenant of promises to each other. We do a ceremony. They sign a document. The whole school comes together. This is elementary all the way to all in the same place, all in the same room, signing these documents that they've created. It's really like signing the Declaration of Independence is really what it comes down to. And then they are the ones that are responsible for when one of those promises get broken. If there's a promise of I'm never going to distract myself or others, and I'm over at you, Will, I'm like, hey man, look at this, look at that, and our goal is to be working on math now. You turn to me and you say, Mike, listen, did you not sign this document that says you're not going to distract yourself or others? I was like, yeah. Well, are you going to live up to it? Okay, yeah, I will. Thank you. Or if it's more of a disagreement about it, then you have the ability to issue the consequence. And, hey, listen, this is the consequence we agreed upon from the start. Here it is. You signed it. This is the consequence. Now I'm executing that consequence. And it's peer-to-peer. So as a guide in that classroom, it's mind-blowing stuff. And the kids do it as the guide in the classroom. If I see that happen, I see something happening that I would normally want to intervene on. Instead of me going over there and saying, hey, aren't you supposed to be doing your work now, or what's going on, or whatever, what I will do is I'll turn to one of the heroes sitting next to me and I'll say, Laura, what do you see? Do you see what I see over there? And he's like, yeah, they're not doing what they should be doing. I was like, what are you going to do about it? This is your community. What are you going to do about it? Do you think something needs to be done about it? And the person oftentimes, especially a new student, will say, well, I don't know. I'm scared. I don't know if I should do anything. Do you want to get a friend to help you? Why don't you go over to one of our returning heroes who's been here for a couple of years? Go ask her what she thinks about it. And then come back to me and tell me what you want to do. If it's you don't want to do anything about it or you want to do something about it, come back and tell me. Then they come back and yeah, they shouldn't be doing that. We're going to go talk to them. They go over and they talk to them. And in some cases, it gets resolved through a conversation. Sometimes there needs to be a mediation with me. They ask for a guide to help them talk it out, and that's fine. Or an older student will come in and help them talk it out. But it's always framed around we've got the consequences in place. And the question to the quote unquote offenders is, are you going to live up to the promises that you signed? If you don't, and it becomes a kind of a repeated pattern, we're going to honor your choices, and this isn't the best place. We really protect the community first, and as the individual, you have to choose to opt into that. And then if you're continually making choices that aren't honoring that community, we're going to honor your choices to not be a part of that community. It rarely gets to the extremes. I did a lot more in the early years, but now that once they understand clearly the boundaries and what they have, it's really an amazing way to do student management discipline. I don't even think of it that way anymore. It's really about building a community that protects itself and enforces the boundaries that it has.
And that students want to be a part of, so much so that they hold each other accountable.
Yeah. Yeah, wow. And they take it seriously. They really take it seriously. And it's so powerful when the younger ones see older ones doing it. And then when the And then the younger ones get to hold the older ones accountable too. So
Wow.
they always like that. I think the challenge, obviously in a private school, we've got some options available that aren't always the same as a public school. But I think that's one of the, that's why I go back to, it's a really hard challenge in that teachers are given in traditional schools.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. And you guys have learning to do and learning to be, but that's even more important to your school than learning to know. When did you guys come up with that focus?
So that actually, that actually comes from the Army. I think there's been other people that have taken it and it's gone. I can't even tell you where the original source is, but that's one of the source documents from Acton. The learning to know is the traditional realm of school. Now I can get everything I need to know here in the palm of my hand. That kind of low level of knowledge is not as prized as it used to be. A professor or a teacher used to be really the sole repository of the knowledge or the text. You came to a person because they had this knowledge. That knowledge is now diffuse. It's spread. That still doesn't change the importance of the person. That's a whole nother conversation. And we can talk about how our guides are really important parts of the community. Knowing what to do with the knowledge and the character that you have and the person that you're becoming is way more important. I think when you listen to Warren Buffett or some of these really successful people that have invested in companies, and they're not timing the stock market, they're not timing any of that stuff. What they're doing is they're investing. The first thing they do is they vet the management team, they vet the people, they vet the leaders. That's who they're investing in. And character is huge. That learning to be you. If I want to build a table, I could read a book about it first, or I could just get started and then, okay, I'm sawing and now I'm doing this and I learn from my mistakes and then I get the information in real time. Or I'm watching a video or it's off of YouTube, or you learn as you do something. Now you're picking up the grammar and the knowledge and the names of things. For me to build a table, I don't need to know what a certain kind of joist is called or a joint or whatever. There's a lot of nomenclature I don't really need to know. But as I build it and as I gain expertise, that grammar comes along. And I think it's the same with writing. Writing's a great example where you become a great writer by just getting feedback and improving. And it's this loop. And it's way better just to write and get feedback than to study the mechanics of writing.
Totally agree with that. Do you feel you guys are changing education?
Yes, that's such a interesting question. The one thing that I want to do is serve my customers well. All the kids that come to me and their families, that their journey, that's the focus. And if that means the demand for that continues to grow, and that means we're serving more people, and then that means we're changing education. And I think what's important for education is that there becomes way more models of how to do education than is currently out there. I think there's so many students can be served in different ways. We don't have to do everything the same for everybody. I think that's the challenge. And I think that's honestly the impossible task of a teacher is to differentiate. I've got a class of 30 kids. Some don't have a clue to what I'm talking about. Some already know what I'm talking about. And some in the middle are a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And it's really hard to differentiate. The only way you can do that is with technology. I think technology has a lot of advantages for us to serve students better. I think if what I'm doing in this kind of out of this free place of a school that I have a lot more liberty and freedom to do things differently than a public school or a charter school, or even kind of a traditional private school. I think I've got a lot more ability to innovate and do things differently. And if some of these things that I do are helpful and informative in other places, then that's great. I want schools to be great, wonderful places for everybody. And I think one of the uses of technology is that it can free us to be more human. When you think about the tasks of a teacher, they're innumerable. And if I can use technology where I can plan a lesson once and it's done, and now this technology is going to differentiate to exactly where each student is, and it's going to give them immediate feedback. And now I don't have to grade. What I just described is Khan Academy. That's our math curriculum, is all of our kids are doing Khan Academy. Now, as the guide, what am I left to do? I don't have to plan anymore. I don't have to grade. I don't have to differentiate. That's all built in with the technology. What am I left to do? You're left to do what great teachers do best. That's to coach, mentor, inspire, equip. That's to build really cool projects for the kids to engage in, to take that mechanical learning that you get in Khan, and then now you're going to apply it in building a surfboard. Our role of the guides, it's really they're architects of learning and managers of the culture, they're the guardians of the culture, to make sure that we're thinking and believing in ways that make everybody as the tribe better. But that's only what humans can do. The computer can't do that yet. I think AI is really interesting, but for now, we've got to use technology to free ourselves to be more human. And that's exciting for me.
I've been around you for years. I said earlier, you have always been innovative. And not only are you talking the talk, but you walk the walk. Your schools have been innovative. I'm so proud of you that you have schools. The network that I know that you helped to build and your vision and your leadership is just amazing. You have always been inspirational to me, man. And I appreciate you for coming on. My last question for you is, where can our listeners find you at?
Yeah, so our website is actonacademychampions.org. That's our school website. We're in Northwest Houston. It's funny. We're probably now, for Houston, we're probably central Northwest or central North. But we've got a Facebook page. I've got an amazing team of people. And it's just a great place for kids. The kids love it. They love coming to school. If I keep going to work at a job that I don't like, it's time for a change. And here's the thing, is we're not the only answer. I don't want to come out here and say we're the best. No, we're just one. We're just one of many. There's so many amazing teachers and educators out there that are all trying to do the best they can for kids and release them to innovate and do things differently and give them the cover they need to do great things for kids. And we're just one of those. And there needs to be a lot more. And I think one of the greatest things out of the pandemic is I think a lot of people saw, wow, we can do things differently. I think it inspired a lot of people to start thinking differently about schools and education. I think that's really important.
We will direct people to your website. My man, thank you for coming on the show. I love talking to you, dude.
I really appreciate being on, Will. It's so good to see you. Let's spend some more time together.
Oh, most definitely, man. What I didn't mention is that you can cook barbecue really well. Let me go ahead and tell this story. I call myself a connoisseur, a cooker. And every time I go to cook a brisket, I make the mistake of inviting you over to my house. And I told you that you could bring a brisket. You came over, you brought your brisket, you put it down, and it's really huge for the Texas men to barbecue. The sad part about it is Mike is from Wisconsin. So this makes the story even worse. So I have my friends over. We're all sitting around, and all my man friends, we all, we can cook, and we all barbecuers. And Mike set this beautifully cooked brisket down, and then he goes to cut it with this immaculate knife, and he really even need the knife because he can cut it with a fork. And then we taste the brisket, and everybody loves it. Now fast forward to every time I cook a brisket, no matter how it looked, hey, that's a great brisket, Dad. But remember when Mike could tell the family, we said we love him and hi, and thank you for coming on.
I love it. Thank you. You're the man, and best luck. Keep doing what you're doing, baby.
Welcome to Flip Tips. Today's flip tip is how to get started with Flipboard. Very simple. I want to thank Jeanette Spire and Terry Porter for coming up with our flip tips for today. The first thing you want to do is download the app for your Android or iOS device. Second thing you want to do is you want to create an account. Make sure you add a picture and complete your bio. Third thing you want to do is you want to follow topics. There are at least 34,000 topics that you can follow. Next thing you want to do is build your magazine. Navigate to the bottom of your profile icon and then select the collection options. Give your magazine a title and you've built your first magazine. I want to give a huge shout out for Terry Porter and Jeanette Spire on giving us today's flip tips.
With so much content wheezing around out there, there's only one storytelling platform that helps you keep calm and stay informed and inspired. Flipboard. Flipboard curates the world's stories so you can be smarter in your work, life, and play. Choose from thousands of topics to personalize Flipboard and get the best stories from the best publishers and experts delivered to you 24/7. Get started now at flipboard.com.
Flipboard fam, thanks for sticking with me on this episode. I want to give a huge thank you to my main man, Michael Olson, for taking the time to talk with us about Acton Academy Champions. I want to give a huge shout out to Aileen Laylor, Mia Quadralo, and Crystal Vanderboom for the editorials on the Flipboard EDU podcast blog. Also, I want to give a huge shout out to everybody at Flipboard. Remember to subscribe to our Flipboard EDU magazine on flipboard.com. You can follow our podcast on all major platforms, so share our podcast with an educator or colleague. Our podcast is available globally, everywhere you listen to podcasts for free. So until next time, family,